The grain merchant's hands are shaking so badly he's leaving sweat marks on his own bronze coins. He's counting out his voluntary contribution while I check the edge of my gladius. We both know this isn't a tax. It's a premium subscription to ensure his shop doesn't accidentally burn down tonight. Rome likes to believe the empire is held together by its laws. The reality is that it survives because men like me, 1,000 miles from the Senate, know how to turn a shakedown into an acceptable administrative procedure. As long as the governor gets his cut and the plebs have their bread, Rome is happy to pretend the ledger is balanced. The merchant just placed an extra gold piece on the pile for the trouble. The question isn't whether I'll take it, it's whether I'll demand a discount on his next wine shipment before I hand him back his stamped ledger. If you know how to run a province without ever ending up in an imperial cell, join the council by subscribing. Signal your cohort. The books are almost straight, and official history can keep on lying. You stand in the garrison courtyard, where the Syrian sun has already turned the limestone walls into radiating ovens, the kind of heat that makes your armor feel like you're wearing someone else's fever. The weight of the lorica segmentata settles across your shoulders with the particular ache of metal heated past comfort, each plate pressing its shape into your tunic in lines you'll feel later when you finally strip it off. The courtyard smells of hot stone and old sweat, of the olive oil the men use on their leather straps, of the faint spice drift from the market entrance where the morning's business has already begun its elaborate dance of negotiation and threat. The grain merchant waits by the colonnade with the practiced nervousness of a man who has done this before and knows exactly how much it costs to survive another month. He's counting coins into a leather purse with fingers that tremble just enough to show fear, but not enough to show disrespect. There's an art to it, and he's mastered the performance. His robes are good linen, expensive but not ostentatious, the kind that says, "I can afford to pay," without saying, "I'm wealthy enough to rob." The morning light catches the sweat on his forehead, where it's already gathering, despite the early hour. You cross the courtyard with measured steps, your optio falling in beside you without being summoned, his presence a silent notation that this is official business, even though nothing about what's going to happen next will appear in any official record. The sound of your hobnailed caligae on stone echoes off the walls, a sound the merchant hears in his sleep probably, the rhythm of Rome arriving to collect what Rome believes it's owed, plus the operational surcharge that keeps the whole mechanism running. Centurion, his voice is steady, he's good at this. I've prepared the monthly contribution toward garrison readiness. You stop in front of him, close enough that he has to look up slightly to meet your eyes. The coins in his purse make a soft sound as he shifts his weight. Behind you, somewhere in the garrison proper, men are running morning drills. The rhythmic clash of wooden practice swords, the optio's shouted count, the sound of an empire maintaining itself through repetition and violence. The contribution is appreciated, you say, using the same formula you've used every month for 3 years, the words smooth as worn stone. The garrison's operational requirements remain constant. He opens the purse, counts out silver denarii one by one into your palm, each coin catching the light as it moves from his hand to yours. The metal is warm. 12 coins. Exactly what he paid last month. Exactly what he'll pay next month, unless his circumstances improve or his circumstances collapse, and either way you'll adjust the amount accordingly, because that's what keeps this arrangement profitable for everyone involved. Then, he reaches into the purse again, places a gold aureus on top of the silver. For administrative flexibility, he says. In case there are unexpected requirements. You close your hand around the coins. The weight is pleasant, exact. This is not improvisation. This is a man who has calculated down to the last sestertius what it costs to run a business in a Roman province where the centurion is the actual law, and Rome is a distant idea that shows up twice a year to collect taxes and confirm your appointment. The garrison accountant, a nervous freedman who learned arithmetic in Alexandria, maintains that there is a correct way to record irregular income in official ledgers. He has explained this correct method to you 4 times. You have nodded seriously each time, then continued doing exactly what you were doing before, which is writing down numbers that satisfy Rome without bearing any particular relationship to reality. He has stopped explaining now, though his eye still twitches slightly when he reviews your monthly reports. You transfer the coins to your own purse. The merchant watches this transaction with the focused attention of a man confirming a contract. When the last coin disappears, his shoulders drop half an inch, relief disguised as relaxation, the physical language of a burden temporarily lifted. The garrison thanks you, you say. Your contribution is noted. It isn't noted. It will never be noted. But the formula requires the statement, and the statement makes the theft feel like administration, which is the only magic that matters out here where Rome is whatever you say it is, as long as the grain shipments keep moving, and nobody writes a letter to Antioch, complaining about unofficial taxes. The merchant bows slightly, not too deep, not too shallow, and withdraws across the courtyard toward the market entrance. Your optio makes no notation on his wax tablet. No stylus moves. The morning inspection is complete, and the books remain exactly as clean as Rome needs them to be. The sun climbs higher. The limestone walls hold their heat. Somewhere in the garrison, men are sharpening blades that will probably never see combat, because the actual work of empire happens here, in transactions like this one, where everyone profits, and nobody admits what they're doing has a name. You head back toward your quarters where your desk waits with its 2 sets of accounts, the official ledger and the private calculations, ready for another day of turning theft into paperwork that will satisfy auditors who are running the same scheme 600 miles west. Your quarters smell of hot stone and ink, oil lamp, dust. The window is narrow, cut into limestone a foot thick, and the light that comes through is already angled toward afternoon, even though the morning drill's just ended. Your desk is scarred wood, old campaign furniture that's seen 3 provinces before this one. 2 ledgers, wax tablets stacked in wooden frames, a stylus case made of bone, the tools of empire administration, which is mostly about writing things down in ways that don't get you executed. You sit. The wooden chair creaks. Your back still carries the weight of the armor you stripped off 10 minutes ago, the ghost pressure of metal plates written into your muscles like memory. The coins from the grain merchant rest in a leather purse beside the official ledger, their weight pleasant and illegal in equal measure. Your predecessor left detailed notes, organized, filed in wooden boxes along the wall with labels in careful Latin script. You pull the box marked Provincial Revenue Reference Materials and set it on the desk. The wood is smooth under your fingers, worn by handling. Inside, tablets, papyrus scrolls, a folded chart sealed with wax that cracked years ago. You break the seal completely, unfold the chart. 2 columns. Left side. Official tax rates, as decreed by the provincial governor's office in Antioch, copied from the edicts that arrive twice yearly with impressive seals and impressive language about the emperor's benevolence toward his Syrian subjects. Right side. Actual collection amounts, recorded in your predecessor's handwriting, month by month for 3 years. The gap between the columns is substantial, consistent. The actual collections run approximately 30% higher than the official rates across every category: grain tax, market fees, transit tariffs, the mysterious administrative surcharge that appears nowhere in any imperial decree, but shows up in every centurion's accounts like a ghost made of silver. At the top of the chart in the same careful script for reference only. You study this. The stylus marks create texture under your fingertips where you trace the columns. The gap is too consistent to be accidental. This is not variance. This is policy, unofficial and unspoken, the actual operating manual for your position written in numbers that everyone understands but nobody names. Your predecessor left detailed notes about provincial administration, including a helpful chart showing official tax rates versus actual collection amounts. The chart is labeled, "For reference only," in careful Latin script. The gap between the two columns is substantial enough that you initially assumed it was a copying error, until you noticed that every centurion's records show approximately the same gap. Apparently, "for reference only" is military code for, "this is how we actually do things, but we're writing it down in a way that preserves deniability." You set the chart down beside the official ledger. Open the ledger to this month's page. The official numbers are already entered in neat columns. Grain collected, taxes paid, market fees recorded. Everything matches the rates from Antioch. Everything satisfies Rome's version of reality, where centurions are loyal administrators, faithfully executing imperial policy in distant provinces. You pull out the private papyrus sheets. These are loose, unbound, written in your own shorthand that nobody else can read. A code you invented during your first year in Syria, when you realized that honesty was a faster path to poverty than competence. The actual numbers live here. The grain merchant's contribution. The other contributions from the wool merchant, the wine seller, the import broker who moves Parthian luxuries through town without asking too many questions about their origin. The supplementary revenue that keeps your men paid, your contacts satisfied, and your own purse heavy enough that retirement might actually mean something other than begging in Rome. The afternoon light shifts. Dust motes turn gold above the desk, suspended in the air like tiny coins. And you watch them drift without purpose, while your mind does the same calculation it does every month. How much can you take before someone in Antioch notices? How much is safety? How much is greed? The answer, according to the chart, is 30%. That's the threshold your predecessor found. That's the threshold every centurion in Syria has found, apparently. Because the system runs on the understanding that Rome doesn't audit what Rome doesn't want to discover. You pick up your stylus. The bone is smooth, worn by use. The wax tablet waits. You begin transferring numbers from the papyrus to the ledger. Not the real numbers, the acceptable ones. The figures that will travel to Antioch next month in a leather case carried by a courier who is also running the same calculations in his own margins. Outside, the garrison sounds continue. Men drilling, horses stamping in the stable. The distant noise of the market where merchants are conducting their own version of this same arithmetic, calculating what they can steal from their customers, what their customers can steal from them, what everyone can steal from Rome before Rome stops pretending not to notice. Your fingers are stained with ink. The stylus scratches across wax with a sound like footsteps on gravel. The numbers align, balance, create the fiction that Rome needs to keep the provinces running, while everyone involved understands the actual price of empire is whatever you can take without ending up in a cell. The chart sits beside your hand, for reference only, visible at the top, and you understand finally that this is the real training you received when you took this posting. Not combat tactics or logistics, but the operational mathematics of sanctioned theft. The grain merchant returns in the afternoon when the market is quieter, and the limestone walls have absorbed enough heat that standing in shade feels like mercy. You're still at your desk when your optio appears in the doorway and announces him with a single nod. No words, because no words are needed when the same transaction happens every month with the precision of a religious ritual. You motion him in. He enters with the careful posture of a man navigating a space where one wrong step means losing everything he's built. The light from your window catches his face, shows the calculation behind his eyes, the professional assessment of mood and danger that keeps merchants alive in provinces where centurions have more practical power than governors. Centurion, he inclines his head, not quite a bow. I wanted to confirm the garrison's satisfaction with this month's contribution. You lean back in the chair. The wood creaks. Your desk still carries the afternoon's work. ledgers, tablets, the papyrus sheets you haven't bothered to hide, because he knows what they are and you know he knows, and this mutual knowledge is what makes the whole mechanism function. The contribution was acceptable, you say. And the additional amount, he's referring to the gold aureus, the extra. The gesture that separates a simple transaction from a relationship, built on the understanding that flexibility has value. I wanted to ensure it addressed any emerging administrative requirements. This is the language you both speak, not theft, not bribery, not protection money. Something else. Something that sounds legitimate enough to say out loud in a room where walls have ears and careers end on the contents of the wrong letter to Antioch. The garrison appreciates, you say, voluntary contributions toward operational flexibility. They allow us to maintain administrative efficiency in ways that benefit the entire provincial community. He nods slowly. You watch him pass this. Translate it. Confirm that you just said, yes, the extra payment works, and yes, I will continue to provide the protection and preferential treatment that keeps your business running, while your competitors drown in the actual legal requirements that I'm choosing not to enforce. The garrison sounds drift through your window. Somewhere close, men are arguing about dice. Farther away, the rhythmic strike of hammer on metal from the forge. The daily noise of empire maintaining itself through repetition and compromise. A gesture of appreciation for the garrison's administrative flexibility, the merchant said. The province thanks you for your contribution to supplementary revenue, you said. The transaction is complete. Both of you understand what just happened. Both of you have conducted official business that exists nowhere, in any record Rome will ever see. The words hang in the air between you, like smoke from the oil lamp, visible but not substantial, real but not documented. The grain merchant has developed an elaborate verbal formula for the monthly payment that never uses words like bribe or protection money. He calls it a voluntary contribution toward garrison readiness and appreciation for administrative flexibility. You call it supplementary provincial revenue. Rome calls it nothing because Rome never asks. Between the three of you, you have created an entire vocabulary for theft that sounds perfectly legitimate in any official context, which is possibly the most Roman thing about the entire arrangement. The merchant prepares to leave. He pauses at the doorway, turns back with the question he asks every month, the one that confirms the arrangement extends into the future. And next month's requirements will be consistent, you say, with established provincial practice. Which means, same amount, same procedure, same understanding that everyone profits as long as nobody says out loud what's actually happening. He nods. Withdraws. Your Optio closes the door behind him with a soft click that sounds like a vault ceiling. You return to your desk. The afternoon light is fading now, turning orange where it cuts through your window, painting the dust motes copper. Your fingers find the stylus again. The ledger waits. The official version of today's events needs recording. A single line noting the grain merchant's compliance with provincial tax requirements. Nothing more. Nothing that would raise questions if an auditor ever bothered to check. Which they won't, because auditors run the same calculations you do. Because the whole empire runs on the understanding that official reality and actual reality exist in parallel, never quite touching, both necessary for the mechanism to function. You write the line. Neat script, proper Latin. The kind of notation that would satisfy any inspector who didn't actually want to know the truth. Outside, evening arrives with the cooling of stone and the shift in market sounds from commerce to closure. Somewhere in the garrison, the watch changes. New men take positions on the wall, old men head toward food and dice and whatever brief forgetting the evening offers. Your desk holds two truths. The official ledger. The private calculations. Both accurate. Both necessary. Both serving the same empire in different languages. And the gap between them is the space where you live. comfortable, compromised, and counting the days until your discharge bonus lets you return to Rome with enough silver to pretend you earned it honestly. The oil lamp flickers. The day's work is done. The numbers balance in the only way that matters, which is the way that keeps everyone alive and profitable and silent about the operational reality of Roman provincial administration. You close the ledger, lock it in the wooden chest beside your desk. The private papyrus sheets you burn later, after dark, when nobody's watching and the smoke disappears into the Syrian night like every other crime Rome chooses not to see. You stand in the warehouse where the grain sacks are stacked. The smell of wheat dust hangs thick. Your hand rests on one of the sacks. The fabric is rough under your palm. The current arrangement has existed for 3 years. The merchant delivers 20 sacks. You record 18 in the official ledger. 2 sacks disappear into the private economy that keeps this garrison fed better than regulation rations would manage. The mathematics are simple. The merchant can afford more. Can afford is different from will accept. You walk between the stacks. The light from the high windows cuts across the stored grain in diagonal bars. Dust moves through the light like smoke. You count the sacks again. 20, always 20. The number has become ritual. You could ask for 3 sacks instead of 2. The merchant's margins would survive. But margins surviving and merchants remaining cooperative are different calculations entirely. A man who feels squeezed looks for alternatives. A man who feels the arrangement is stable keeps his mouth shut and his deliveries consistent. There is a section in the official military regulations about unauthorized appropriation of provincial resources that carries a penalty of flogging and discharge. You have read this section multiple times with genuine interest, trying to determine whether what you do technically qualifies as unauthorized. The regulation assumes someone higher in the chain of command would notice and object, but everyone higher in the chain is doing the same thing at larger scale. It is possible you have discovered a legal paradox. Theft that cannot be prosecuted because prosecution would require admitting the prosecutors are also thieves. The warehouse floor is stone, laid by someone who cared about levelness. No dips where water could pool and rot the grain, no gaps where rats could nest. The work was done properly 20 years ago and it still holds. You notice this, because noticing what holds and what fails is how you've survived. The sacks themselves are Egyptian weave, tighter than local work. The merchant sources them from a supplier in Alexandria who charges extra but delivers consistency. No tears. No weak seams that split when the legionnaires lift them. The merchant told you this once, unprompted, and you understood he was explaining why his margins are what they are. A man who explains his costs without being asked is a man who wants you to know he's not cheating you within the arrangement you've already built around cheating Rome. You run your hand along the next stack. The fabric has taken on the coolness of the stone floor beneath. In summer this warehouse stays bearable, even when the sun turns the parade ground into a furnace. The high windows are positioned to catch the north wind. Whoever designed this building understood grain storage the way you now understand percentages, as a matter of small, careful decisions that compound over time into the difference between surplus and disaster. The merchant's son came with the delivery last month, younger, watching everything, learning the roots and the relationships before his father's back gives out, or his heart stops, or whatever it is that ends men who spend their lives moving heavy things for narrow profit. The son watched you count, watched you mark the ledger, watched the 2 sacks go aside. He said nothing. His father said nothing. The silence was its own form of contract negotiation. You step back and look at the full inventory. 20 sacks today, 20 sacks next month. The number doesn't change, because changing it would require a conversation neither you nor the merchant wants to have. The arrangement rests on the foundation of no one ever saying the quiet part aloud. You make a mark in the private ledger. 18 sacks recorded. The notation is clean. The ink doesn't smudge. The merchant will return next month. The number will be 20 again. You will record 18 again. The 2 sacks will feed the men who guard this town, and who ask fewer questions every year about where the better bread comes from. Stability is more profitable than greed. This is the lesson provincial service teaches slowly, over years, until it becomes reflex. You close the ledger. The warehouse is quiet, except for the small sounds of settling grain, and the distant noise of the market beyond the walls. The current percentage holds. The new legionnaire asks his question during the water break, when the morning drill has ended and the men are standing in the narrow shade along the barracks wall. His face shows the specific confusion of someone who has read the regulations, and is now watching reality operate under different rules entirely. Why does the wine merchant pay you directly? The other soldiers drink their water and pretend not to listen. You watch them pretend. This is a question every new man asks eventually, and how you answer determines whether he becomes useful, or becomes the kind of soldier who writes letters to tribunes about irregularities he's observed. You set down your cup. The limestone wall behind you holds the morning's heat, even though you're standing in shadow. The air tastes like dust, and the distant smell of cooking oil from the market quarter. There is no provincial collector within 3 days' travel, you say. Maintaining one would cost Rome more than the taxes collected. The provincial governor in Antioch has quietly allowed garrison commanders to handle local revenue collection. It saves everyone time and money. Is that official policy? You pull out the regulation scroll from the leather case at your belt. The papyrus is worn at the edges from being unrolled too many times for this exact conversation. You find the section and hold it where he can read it. Commanders shall exercise appropriate discretion in matters of local administration. He reads it. His lips move slightly, then he looks up. What does appropriate discretion mean? It means exactly what I'm doing. Stop asking questions that have uncomfortable answers. The water in your cup has gone warm. You drink it anyway because the next water break isn't until after javelin practice and your throat is already dry from shouting drill corrections. The cup is wood, local work, turned on a lathe by someone in the lower market, who makes them for the garrison at a price that undercuts what the official quartermaster in Antioch would charge. Another arrangement. Another discretion exercised. You can hear the metalsmith working 2 streets over. The rhythmic clang of hammer on heated iron carries in the still air. He's making spear points under contract to you, instead of sending them through official channels where they'd cost twice as much and arrive 4 months late. The sound is steady. Reliable. The same rhythm every afternoon. The kind of sound that means the Empire's actual work is getting done, while the Empire's official correspondence sits unread in Antioch. The legionnaire is still standing there, still holding the edge of uncertainty. You've seen this moment before in every new arrival. The moment when they decide whether the empire they imagined exists anywhere outside the regulations they memorized in training. The regulations also say we're supposed to receive full meat rations twice weekly, you say. Check the date on the last shipment from the official supply depot. He doesn't need to check. Everyone knows the official supply system is 6 months behind and getting worse. The butcher in the market delivers every 4 days, you continue. Fresh. Because I pay him directly, instead of making him wait for Rome's treasury to process paperwork that 3 different clerks have to approve before he sees a single coin. You ate well yesterday. That's what appropriate discretion looks like. One of the older soldiers coughs. It might be agreement. It might be a warning to the new man to stop asking questions. The sound serves either purpose. The legionnaire nods slowly. You watch the acceptance settle into his shoulders. It's not quite relief and not quite resignation. It's the specific posture of a man realizing that the choice isn't between right and wrong, but between functional and paralyzed. The other soldiers start moving back toward the drill ground. The water break is over. The legionnaire stands there for another moment, the scroll still in front of him, reading the line again, as if reading it more carefully will make it say something different. It won't. You roll up the scroll and put it back in its case. The leather is warm from the sun. The legionnaire follows the others toward the drill ground without speaking again. You watch him go and you see it in his shoulders. The exact moment when he decides whether to accept how things work or to become a problem. He accepts it. They almost always do. You pass the Optio's quarters in the afternoon and notice his private ledger lying open on his desk. The door is ajar, not wide, just enough. The light from his window falls directly on the page, and the numbers are clearly visible from where you stand. You stop. Look, the amounts are smaller than yours, but not dramatically smaller. Appropriate for the difference in rank. He's taking his percentage from the same revenue streams you've been managing. The grain, the wine, the arrangement with the livestock merchant who delivers to the garrison kitchens. You don't knock, you don't enter. You stand there long enough to see the numbers, then you keep walking. That evening you leave your own private ledger on your desk in similar position. The door to your quarters rests half open. The lamp is positioned so the light falls on the page where anyone walking past can read the figures without needing to step inside. The wood of your desk is scarred from years of other officers doing the same work you do now. Cup rings, knife marks from opening wax seals. A long gouge near the edge where someone dragged something heavy across it without caring. The surface has absorbed lamp oil until the grain has darkened to almost black in places. You can smell it faintly when the lamp burns. Old oil, old wood. The accumulated residue of administrative work done in rooms like this across every garrison in the province. Your Optio's desk is newer, lighter wood, fewer scars. He hasn't been in rank long enough to destroy his furniture yet. But the ledger on it is the same type as yours, bound in the same leather, using the same ink. You both bought them from the same scribe in the market who sells them without asking what they're for because he's not stupid, and staying not stupid keeps him in business. The lamp oil you use comes from the same merchant who supplies the garrison's official needs. He sells to you at the official rate, then sells to you again privately at a slightly higher rate for the better quality he reserves for people who pay in coin instead of promises. The lamp on your desk burns cleaner than the lamps in the barracks. The men have noticed. No one has commented. You adjust the lamp's position. The light falls more directly on the open page. The numbers are clear. Legible from the doorway. Anyone walking past can see exactly what you take and from where. You step back and look at the effect. The ledger, the light, the half-open door. It looks accidental. It looks like carelessness. It is the opposite of carelessness. Your Optio has begun leaving his private ledger on his desk where you can see it when you pass his quarters, which you interpret as either a gesture of trust or a subtle threat. The numbers in his ledger are smaller than yours but not dramatically smaller, which seems appropriate given the difference in your ranks. You have started leaving your own private ledger similarly visible, creating a situation where you both know exactly what the other is taking, and both pretend not to notice. It is possibly the most functional working relationship you have ever had. The next morning you pass his quarters again. The ledger is closed, stored properly. His door is shut. You close your own ledger that afternoon and store it in the wooden chest where you keep the private accounts. The lock clicks. The sound is small and final. Neither of you mentions this arrangement. There's nothing to mention. You both know what the other knows. You both know that knowledge could destroy either of you if deployed incorrectly. You both know that mutual destruction is less profitable than mutual silence. The Optio salutes you during evening inspection. You return it. His expression shows nothing. Yours shows nothing. The men stand in their lines and wait for dismissal. You dismiss them. They break formation and head toward the barracks. The Optio remains behind for a moment, checking something in his notes that doesn't need checking. Then he walks away. His footsteps are steady on the packed dirt of the parade ground. The ledgers stay closed. The arrangement continues. This is how trust works when trust means something more practical than friendship. The Legionnaire stands in your quarters after the evening meal, his posture somewhere between attention and defiance. The room is dim, one lamp on the desk, shadows pooling in the corners where the limestone walls meet. Outside, the sound of men settling into barracks routine filters through the narrow window. Footsteps on packed earth, the metallic scrape of armor being set aside. Someone laughing at something you don't hear. He took grain. Not from the official stores, that would be too obvious, too stupid. But from the private arrangement with the merchant, the secondary flow that exists in the margins of the official ledgers. 3 sacks instead of 1. Small enough that he thought it wouldn't matter, large enough that it did. I only took what everyone else takes, the Legionnaire said. You let the silence extend. The lamp flame shifts slightly, casting new shadows across the desk where your hands rest flat against the wood. The Legionnaire's breathing is audible in the quiet. He's young enough that he still thinks an explanation will fix this. Everyone takes an appropriate amount. You took more than appropriate. There is a difference, you said. The distinction matters, because the entire system depends on it. The mathematics are simple. A garrison of 40 men requires a certain baseline of supplies to function. Rome provides most of that baseline, but not all. The gap between what Rome provides and what the garrison actually needs gets filled through local arrangements, contributions from merchants, farmers, minor officials who understand that a well-fed garrison is a cooperative garrison. Everyone involved takes a small percentage for themselves. That's expected. That's the cost of doing business in a province where official salary barely covers boot leather. But the percentages have to stay small. Take too much, and the merchant can't afford to keep participating. Take too much, and the whole elegant structure collapses into something uglier. Confiscation, resentment, the kind of tension that makes a town stop cooperating and start plotting. We know the difference between theft everyone accepts and theft that disrupts the system. The Legionnaire shifts his weight. His eyes move to the desk, to the floor, back to you. He's realizing the explanation didn't work. You lose this month's extra share, you said. 2 weeks of double watch duty, night rotation. Harsh enough to make the point, not harsh enough to make him resentful or desperate. The goal isn't punishment, it's recalibration. He needs to understand the rules before he becomes a liability, before someone else notices and the problem escalates beyond your ability to contain it quietly. The Legionnaire nods, no argument left in him. Dismissed. He leaves. The door closes with the soft sound of wood against stone. You sit in the lamplight and consider the problem of teaching sustainable corruption to men who barely understand why the corruption is necessary in the first place. Rome doesn't pay enough. The province doesn't produce enough surplus to support a garrison on official channels alone. So the unofficial channels exist, and they work, but only if everyone involved understands the limits. The lamplight catches the grain of the wood beneath your hands. Oak, probably, though after years of use and oil the surface has darkened to something almost black. Your thumb finds a gouge near the edge, a divot someone carved before you arrived, before this room was yours. The wood is cool despite the lamp's proximity. You add a note to the private ledger, the one that never leaves this room, the Legionnaire's name, the infraction, the discipline applied. Not because you'll need to reference it later, but because writing it down makes it real, makes it part of the garrison's institutional memory that exists only in your head, and in these pages that no one else reads. The lamp burns lower. Outside, the garrison settles into night routines. Somewhere in the barracks, the legionnaire is explaining to his bunkmates why he just got assigned double watch. The story will spread. That's fine, that's part of the lesson. The evening air moves through the window, carrying the smell of cook fires and dust. The official correspondence from Antioch requests detailed reports on revenue optimization and Tech America local resource utilization, which are apparently the current administrative euphemisms for, "We know you are stealing and we want to make sure you are stealing efficiently." You have responded with equally careful language about maximizing provincial yield and appropriate allocation of collected resources. An entire layer of imperial administration now consists of people writing elaborate lies to each other in terminology that everyone understands means the opposite of what it says. The ledger on your desk contains two sets of numbers. The first set, written in the standard format that any imperial auditor would recognize, shows grain requisitions, merchant payments, garrison expenses, all recorded in the proper columns with the proper totals. Everything balances, everything looks entirely legitimate. The second set of numbers exists in the margins, in symbols that look like scribal errors or ink blots, but that you can read perfectly well. These numbers show what actually happened. How much grain the merchant provided, how much you paid, how much the legionnaires took as their share, how much went to the minor officials who make sure the town council doesn't complain too loudly about garrison presence. Both sets of numbers are accurate. Both are necessary. The official ledger protects you from auditors. The private annotations protect you from forgetting how the system actually works. You dip the pen and add today's transaction to both columns. A delivery of oil, 20 amphorae in the official record, 24 in reality. The difference went to the garrison physician, who used it to treat a farmer's infected leg, and thereby earned the garrison 3 months of goodwill from a man who happens to supply most of the local barley. The calculation is clear. 4 amphorae of oil purchased cooperation worth considerably more than 4 amphorae of oil. Outside, the afternoon heat presses against the stone walls. The window offers no relief. The air that enters is thick and still, carrying the smell of animals and human occupation. The particular scent of a town that exists because a road exists. Because Rome needs this specific place to be inhabited and functional. Your hand moves across the page, converting reality into the language of administration. The official column requires careful phrasing. The private notation requires only truth. Between the two, you construct the version of events that allows everyone involved to continue their work without interference. The correspondence from Antioch sits beside the ledger, waiting for your response. The phrasing is delicate. They want to know how you are managing resources, but they don't want to know specifically, because then they would be required to acknowledge officially what everyone acknowledges unofficially, and that acknowledgement would create complications no one wants. You write, current resource allocation continues to meet garrison operational requirements while maintaining positive provincial relationships. Local merchant cooperation remains excellent. All transactions recorded according to standard protocols. Every word is true. Every word means something slightly different than what it says. The official in Antioch will read it and understand that you are stealing at an acceptable rate, that the locals aren't complaining, that the numbers will look correct if anyone bothers to check them. He will file the report and send back authorization to continue current practices, phrased as a commendation for efficient administration. The pen scratches against papyrus. The afternoon air settles heavier. Somewhere in the town, the merchant is recording the same transaction in his own ledger, creating his own version of truth that balances official requirements against actual profit. The whole province operates on these parallel records, one set for Rome, one set for reality. As long as both versions remain internally consistent, as long as no one demands they be reconciled against each other, the system functions. You seal the correspondence and set it aside for the next courier. The ledger remains open. both sets of numbers visible in the slanting light. The shadows lengthen across the desk as the sun moves lower. Two farmers stand in the courtyard, both sun-darkened and work-worn, both holding their hats in their hands with the careful respect that comes from speaking to someone who can make their lives considerably worse. The older one, Quintus, a man whose family has worked the same plot since before Rome arrived, speaks first. "The channel runs through my property," he said. "My grandfather dug it. My father maintained it. The water is mine to allocate." The younger farmer, Marcus, keeps his eyes on the ground, but his jaw is set. "The spring that feeds the channel rises on my land. Without the spring, there is no water to allocate." You stand in the shade of the courtyard wall and listen to the argument you've heard 3 times already this season: water rights. The oldest dispute in any province where rainfall is uncertain and irrigation is survival. The law is clear: water belongs to Rome, and Rome grants usage rights according to need and historical precedent. But historical precedent in this case is complicated by the fact that both men have legitimate claims, and need is complicated by the fact that both men are growing the barley that feeds the garrison. "How much water do you each require?" you said. Quintus answers first. "Enough to keep 4 acres productive. The channel can provide that, if I control the flow properly." Marcus shifts his weight. "The spring provides enough for 6 acres if it's not restricted by channel gates." The arithmetic is simple. The spring produces enough water for 6 acres. Quintus wants 4. Marcus wants 6. The channel that Quintus's family built can deliver 4 acres worth if properly maintained. "Marcus, you said, you will receive water rights for 4 acres, 2 using the existing channel through Quintus's property, 2 using a new channel you will dig yourself on your own land. Quintus maintains the existing channel and retains control of his 4 acres. You both deliver barley to the garrison at the agreed rate. If either channel fails due to poor maintenance, the water rights revert to the other party until repairs are complete." Both men stand silent, working through the implications. Marcus gets his 4 acres of cultivation using water that's legally his. Quintus retains control of the channel his family built, and 4 acres of his own. Both maintain their obligations to the garrison. Neither can claim the other is stealing what belongs to him. "The new channel," Marcus said slowly, "that's 40 paces of digging through hard ground." "Yes," you said. "And if I don't maintain it properly, I lose my water rights." "Yes." He nods. The arithmetic is clear enough. 40 paces of hard labor buys him independence from Quintus's gates, and guaranteed water for half his land. The alternative is continued dispute, and the possibility that you'll decide the entire matter in Quintus's favor just to end the interruption to garrison supply. Quintus is already calculating. With Marcus digging his own channel, the spring's full output will be split more evenly. His own 4 acres will have slightly less pressure from upstream diversion. The arrangement costs him nothing, and removes a source of ongoing conflict. "Agreed," Quintus said. Marcus takes longer but finally nods. "Agreed." "The agreement will be recorded with the town council," you said. You both acknowledge the terms as binding. Dismissed. They leave together, not as friends but as men who have reached a functional arrangement. The courtyard empties. The shadows have shifted across the paving stones while you stood there, the sun moving through its arc with the patient indifference of something far too large to notice individual human concerns. You return to your quarters and add the water rights decision to the private ledger. Not for legal purposes. The town council will maintain the official record, but because these small rulings accumulate into the garrison's relationship with the province. Every farmer who receives a fair hearing is a farmer who will supply barley when you need it, who will report bandit movements, who will not complain when legionnaires pass through his fields. The ledger entry is brief. 2 names, the nature of the dispute, the solution, the date. Beside it, in the margin, you note the current barley commitment from both farmers and the expected delivery schedule. The afternoon light fills the room with the particular golden quality that precedes evening. Outside, the sounds of the garrison continue. Men drilling, horses being walked, the steady rhythm of an outpost maintaining itself through routine and repetition. The water will flow through 2 channels now instead of 1. The barley will grow, the garrison will eat. The system will continue because you made a decision that balanced competing legitimate claims in a way that allowed both men to walk away intact. The scratch of stylus on wax fills the quiet office as you work through the official ledger. Each entry creates its small sound in the evening stillness. A soft scrape, a pause, another scrape. You listen to your own breathing between notations, the rhythm of administrative work becoming almost meditative in its repetition. The numbers you record will travel to Antioch next month, each figure perfectly cross-referenced, beautifully organized. The lamp flame holds steady in the still air, no wind tonight. The wax tablet sits at the precise angle that keeps the lamplight from creating glare, a detail you've adjusted without thinking after 3 years of evening documentation. Your hand moves with practiced efficiency, entry, cross-reference, notation in the margin where the subtotals appear. You have discovered that the key to successful embezzlement is meticulous record-keeping. The official ledger must be so thoroughly documented, so precisely cross-referenced, so beautifully organized, that no auditor wants to actually check whether the numbers correspond to reality. You spend more time on the false accounting than you would on honest accounting, which seems inefficient until you remember that honest accounting would result in you living on a centurion's salary. Suddenly the extra effort seems entirely reasonable. The grain requisition from last week gets its entry. 40 sacks delivered, payment rendered to the merchant at the standard provincial rate. The numbers are correct. The merchant exists. The grain arrived. Every detail can be verified, except the part where the merchant paid you back a percentage that doesn't appear anywhere in these carefully maintained columns. You set down the stylus, flex your fingers. The joints are stiff from holding the same position too long. Outside, the evening patrol passes through the courtyard. You hear the footsteps, the low exchange of voices as the guard changes. Normal sounds, expected sounds. The garrison running exactly as it should while you sit here creating the documentary evidence that it runs exactly as Rome expects. The wax has cooled enough that the next entry won't smear. You pick up the stylus again. The water rights dispute from 2 days ago needs documentation. The resolution, the parties involved, the official finding. You write it in the formal language that makes a simple arrangement between 2 farmers sound like imperial jurisprudence. The oil in the lamp has burned down by a finger's width since you began. The wick needs trimming. The flame has started to smoke faintly at the edges, leaving a thin dark line against the ceiling plaster. You'll trim it after the next entry. The small maintenance tasks that punctuate administrative work, each one a brief interruption in the rhythm of documentation. The stylus moves. The wax receives each mark with the same small resistance, the same soft scratch. 3 more entries, and the week's accounting is complete. You'll review it tomorrow in daylight. Check each cross-reference. Verify each subtotal adds correctly to the figures that will eventually reach Antioch, where someone will glance at them, note their precision, and file them without reading further. Your lower back has begun to ache from sitting. The wooden chair offers no cushion, no yield. You shift your weight slightly, feeling the stiffness in your spine. Another occupational consequence. Centurions who spend their days in formation develop different pains than centurions who spend their evenings hunched over ledgers. The flame wavers slightly, some air current you can't feel. The shadow of your hand moves across the desktop, then steadies. You finish the final entry. Set the stylus aside. The ledger sits complete, ready for review, every number in its proper column waiting to tell the story Rome wants to hear about how this province operates. You sort the day's coins by touch in the privacy of your quarters. The different weights and sizes are distinct under your fingers, even in dim light. Syrian bronze heavier than expected. Roman denarii worn smooth at the edges. The occasional odd piece from a merchant who trades too far east and brings back currency that doesn't quite match anything in circulation. Some coins are smooth from years of handling, others still sharp-edged from the mint. You don't need to see them to know which pile they belong in. The leather purse grows heavier as you separate what belongs to Rome from what belongs to you. Your fingers move with practiced efficiency, no longer needing to think about which pile receives which coin. The weight tells you. The feel of the edge. The small variations in diameter that mark provincial mints from imperial ones. A knock at the door. 2 taps, deliberate spacing. Enter. The Optio steps inside, closes the door behind him without being told. His eyes move to the desk, to the 2 piles of coins, back to your face. He doesn't say anything about what he sees. The night patrol is set, he says. No issues with the roster. Good. He stands there, waiting for something. You've worked with him long enough to recognize when he has more to say and is choosing his moment to say it. You set down the coin you were holding. Something else? The grain merchant came by the barracks this afternoon, asked after you. Said he had a question about next week's delivery schedule. I'll speak with him tomorrow. He seemed concerned about the timing. As expected, the Optio knows everything. The timing is managed, you say. He'll have his answer tomorrow. The Optio nods. One small movement of his head that acknowledges the conversation without commenting on it. He's seen the 2 piles of coins. He knows what the grain merchant's concern actually involves. He also knows that what he knows stays exactly where it is. Known, but unspoken. Anything else, you ask? No, sir. He leaves. The door closes with the same quiet precision he uses for everything. You return to the coins. The pile on the left continues growing. Rome's share, documented and accounted for. The pile on the right grows more slowly. Your share, undocumented and staying that way. The mathematics work because you've made them work, because every percentage is calculated to remain small enough that nobody in Antioch will notice the difference between what was collected and what was reported. The temperature has dropped since sunset. You feel it in the stone beneath your feet, in the slight chill creeping through the window gap. The coins themselves have cooled, no longer holding the warmth of the merchant's purse, now taking on the night air's quality. Metal conducts cold efficiently. Your fingertips register each coin's temperature as you sort, a tactile confirmation of how long you've been sitting here dividing the day's collection. The bronze pieces make a soft sound as you stack them by denomination. The leather purse accepts each coin with a small metallic whisper. Outside, the night deepens. The evening sounds of the garrison fade toward the quiet that comes before sleep. Your shoulders carry tension from the posture of counting. You roll them once, feeling the small releases in the muscles. Administrative work has its own physical cost, different from combat training but present nonetheless. Your fingers find the last coin. Roman denarius, smooth edge, standard weight. It goes into the left pile. Rome's portion, fully documented, ready to be recorded in tomorrow's official correspondence. You tie the purse closed. The weight of it sits heavy in your palm for a moment before you place it in the locked chest beneath the desk. The visiting assessor's voice carries the particular tone of someone conducting official business while signaling openness to unofficial arrangement. Each word carefully weighted. Each pause meaningful. Your records demonstrate exemplary precision, the assessor said. The province benefits from thorough administration, you said. He sits across from you in the small office, the official ledger open between you on the desk. His finger traces down a column of figures, stops at a subtotal, continues without comment. The lamp between you casts his shadow long across the limestone wall. Wine is poured. Not the garrison issue, something better, kept for occasions that require more than water and good intentions. He accepts the cup with a small nod that acknowledges the gesture without commenting on its implications. The organization here is notable, he says. Many garrisons struggle with record-keeping, grain requisitions that don't match deliveries, payment schedules that fall behind provincial deadlines. Your documentation shows none of these common deficiencies. The merchants here understand their obligations, and you ensure they meet them. I ensure the system functions. He drinks, sets the cup down precisely in the clear space beside the ledger. His eyes move to the second set of tablets stacked on the shelf behind you, the ones that contain the backup documentation, the cross-references, the meticulously maintained evidence that everything recorded in the official ledger corresponds to actual events in the actual world. I'll need to review those as well, he says, for completeness. You hand them to him without hesitation. Each tablet is exactly what it appears to be. A faithful record of transactions, deliveries, payments, all cross-referenced to the figures in the official ledger, with the kind of precision that takes more time to create than the transactions themselves required. He pages through them. His expression doesn't change. He's looking for discrepancies, gaps, the small errors that indicate either incompetence or active falsification. He won't find them. You've made certain of that. The visiting assessor has a remarkable ability to not see things. He looks directly at the wine merchant handing you coins, and somehow perceives only a merchant and a centurion having a conversation. He reviews ledgers where the numbers are obviously fictional, and finds them admirably precise. He tours the garrison and notices everything except the things that would require him to file a negative report. It is a professional skill you deeply respect, the ability to perform thoroughness while avoiding discovery. Excellent, he says finally, closes the tablet, returns it to the stack with the same precision he uses for everything. My report will note your exemplary administration. The provincial governor will be pleased to know this garrison operates with such efficiency. Rome's interests are served. Indeed. He finishes the wine, stands. The formal part of the visit is complete. What remains is the informal part. The part where arrangements are confirmed, percentages agreed upon, the understanding reached that his positive report will be matched by appropriate recognition of his thoroughness. You walk him to the door. The courtyard outside is quiet in the afternoon heat. A few legionnaires visible in the shade along the barracks wall, but no one close enough to hear what is said next. The garrison appreciates your attention to detail, you say. The words carry their own weight. Recognition that his not seeing requires as much skill as your not recording, and that both services deserve compensation. Thoroughness serves the empire, he replies, equally weighted, equally understood. He leaves. You watch him cross the courtyard, his shadow short beneath him in the overhead sun, his posture that of a man satisfied with work well done. You return to your office. The ledger still sits open on the desk where he left it, every figure correct, every cross-reference verified. Every entry, a small masterpiece of creative accounting that will survive any audit, because the audit has already happened, and found exactly what it was supposed to find. The afternoon light angles through the narrow window, the wine cups still sit on the desk, you gather them, set them aside for cleaning. The system continues. Rome receives its reports. The garrison receives its supplies. The merchants receive their arrangements. The assessor receives his recognition. Everyone profits more from cooperation than from the alternative. Outside, the heat builds toward evening. You stand on the garrison wall looking out at the trade road where moonlight makes the dust pale against darker earth. The wadi 3 miles east shows as a darker line in the landscape, visible from this position if you know where to look. The smuggling route. You've known about it for 8 months. The caravans that use it pay you 20 denarii monthly for the privilege of your sustained inattention. The arrangement works because the goods they're moving, Syrian glass, certain medicinal plants, bronze work that bypasses the guild inspections, don't threaten Rome's interests enough to matter. The tax collectors in Antioch never see those caravans. You do. And you don't. Of course, some revenue remains entirely private. The optio knows about the grain merchant. He knows about the wine seller's contributions. He knows about the standard arrangement with the leather workers. Those streams of income appear in the private ledger you both understand exists. But the wadi payments? Those stay elsewhere, memorized, unrecorded. The kind of knowledge that would give your second-in-command leverage you're not willing to grant. The air is cool enough that you can feel it on your face. The stars are visible in the gaps between scattered clouds. Down in the town, a dog barks once, then stops. You consider the mathematics. 20 denarii monthly equals 240 annually. Enough to matter. Not enough to destabilize anything. The caravans keep moving. The goods reach Damascus or Palmyra or wherever they're going. Nobody in the imperial administration notices because there's nothing to notice. Just empty landscape and monthly reports that mention routine patrols with no incidents. The wallstone under your hands has cooled since sunset. You can feel the texture of it, limestone cut rough for grip. You've memorized the caravan schedule without meaning to. 3rd week of each month, after midnight when the moon is waning or absent entirely. The lead merchant wears a bronze ring that catches light even in darkness. You've never asked why he chooses something so visible for work that depends on invisibility. The payment arrives 2 days later, delivered by a boy who never speaks. 20 denarii in a leather purse that smells of cardamom and distance. The first time, 8 months ago, you walked down to the wadi before dawn to see what the route actually looked like up close. The passage cut through limestone, narrow enough that a laden camel had to turn sideways in places. Someone, generations of someones, had worn the stone smooth. This wasn't a new route. It was old when Rome arrived, and it would outlast Rome when Rome left. You understood then that you weren't creating corruption. You were inheriting it, administering it, taking your place in a system that preceded you and would continue after you, because the wadi didn't care about empires. It cared about connection. Antioch to Damascus, Damascus to Palmyra, Palmyra to everywhere east that Romans had never seen and never would. The knowledge sits in your mind filed under things the optio must never learn, not because he'd disapprove, he wouldn't, but because some leverage must remain private, must stay yours alone, or the balance you've constructed here fails. Below, a door opens. Lamplight spills into the street for a moment, then disappears as the door closes. The sound of footsteps fades toward the market quarter. You stay on the wall a while longer. The wadi sits dark in the moonlight, holding its secrets the way it has for 8 months, the way it will for however long this posting lasts. The sound of your stylus on wax is the only noise in the night-quiet office as you work through the private ledger, the one the optio knows exists, the one that records what actually happened today. Grain merchant, 12 denarii. Wine seller, 8. The tanner, 3, plus the usual arrangement regarding leather for harness repair. A farmer settling a boundary dispute, 2. The cloth merchant who needed a letter of transit, 5. 38 denarii. You record it in the column designated for this type of income, using the shorthand you developed, that means something only to you and to your second-in-command. The lamp flame holds steady, your breathing becomes audible in the silence, steady, calm, the rhythm of a man doing familiar work. There is apparently a correct amount to steal, enough to make the position worthwhile, but not so much that it destabilizes the local economy or attracts attention from Rome. You learned this when a centurion 2 provinces over was recalled for excessive revenue irregularities, which you eventually understood meant he got greedy and took so much that merchants started complaining to the governor. The lesson is clear. Theft is acceptable, even expected, but it must be theft that allows everyone else to also profit moderately. Sustainable corruption. You finish the column. Add the month's total. The number sits at the bottom of the page, representing income that will never appear in any document that leaves this room. The wax surface shows the marks of previous entries, partially smoothed but still visible as faint impressions. Layer upon layer of transactions, recorded and then half erased, leaving a palimpsest of small corruptions. You learnt the sealing by accident. A letter arrived last year from the provincial governor's office, not to you, but forwarded through you to a centurion in the next district. The seal had been damaged in transit. You read it. The centurion was being recalled not for stealing but for stealing the wrong amount. Too much, and the merchants had written to Antioch. Not to complain about the theft itself, but about the scale. Unsustainable exactions, the letter said. You resealed it, sent it onward, never mentioned it to anyone. The recalled centurion had been taking 60%, you take 20%. The difference between those numbers is the difference between Rome's quiet tolerance and Rome's abrupt correction. The grain merchant this morning had 80 denarii in his purse. You saw it when he counted out your 12. You could have asked for 30, for 40. He'd have paid it. He had no choice. But next month he'd have less profit to split with the farmers who supply him. The month after, those farmers would have less to spend at the tanner's shop. 3 months from now, the whole market quarter would be poorer, slower, and someone would write a letter. So, 12 denarii. Enough to matter. Not enough to break anything. The lamp flame wavers as you shift your weight. The wax tablet reflects the light in pale gold. You close it carefully, matching the edges so the seal depression aligns. Outside, the night has deepened. No wind, no voices. Just the absolute quiet of a garrison town after the evening meal, when everyone is inside and the streets belong to the watch. You set the stylus down. Flex your fingers. The work is complete. The numbers are recorded. Tomorrow you'll begin again with new transactions, new arrangements, new additions to the private economy that keeps this position profitable. The lamp continues burning. You don't move to extinguish it yet. Just sit with the completed ledger, the finished work, the satisfaction of accounts properly maintained, even when those accounts exist nowhere officially. The monthly report takes shape under your hands. Each line of text visible in the lamplight, as you compose the official fiction that will travel to Antioch. Garrison strength, full complement, morale satisfactory, drill performance within standards. Your handwriting flows across the papyrus, neat, professional, exactly the style expected from a centurion of 15 years, service. Grain requisitions, processed according to schedule. Local merchant cooperation excellent, no incidents requiring disciplinary action. The numbers align in perfect columns, cross-referenced, annotated where appropriate. Every figure supports every other figure, in a structure of mutual reinforcement, that an auditor could follow for hours, without finding contradiction. Because there is no contradiction, the fiction is internally consistent, that's the key. The report doesn't have to match reality, it has to match itself. Trade route patrols, conducted as specified, no banditry reported, roads clear and secure. You describe a province that exists only in these documents. A place where Roman authority functions smoothly, where local populations cooperate willingly, where the machinery of empire operates exactly as designed. The provincial governor in Antioch will read this report and see confirmation of what he already believes. His province is stable. His centurions are competent. The system works. Which it does, just not the way the report describes. The papyrus texture changes under your fingers as you work across the sheet. Egyptian manufacture. You can tell by the way the fibers run horizontal in the top layer, vertical beneath. Someone in Alexandria pressed this months ago, dried it in the sun, rolled it for shipping. It traveled up the coast to Antioch, sat in a warehouse, got distributed to garrison offices throughout Syria. Now it's here, receiving lies that will travel back the same route in reverse. You learn the governor's preferences from reading 2 years of previous reports stored in the garrison archive. He likes round numbers, appreciates brief commentary on local conditions, just enough to show awareness, not so much that it suggests problems. Values consistency month to month, because variance implies instability and instability implies oversight failures. So you give him what he values. Grain requisitions that match the authorized amount exactly. Patrol reports that describe routine movements with no noteworthy encounters. A local population that cooperates predictably because they're satisfied with Roman administration. The only true sentence in the entire document is the date. Your signature goes at the bottom, the same practice script you've used for 15 years, the same tilt to the letters, the same spacing. A man's signature shouldn't change. Consistency signals reliability. Reliability signals that nothing requires closer attention. You reach the end. Add your signature, the same signature that appears on the official ledger, on requisition forms, on a dozen other documents that compose the administrative reality of this garrison. When you roll the papyrus, you feel the satisfaction of work completed well, even though the work is entirely fabrication. Maybe especially because of that. Because the fabrication is so thorough, so carefully constructed, that it will survive any scrutiny short of someone actually traveling here and counting every sack of grain themselves. Which no one will do. Because the report satisfies, and satisfaction is what Rome requires from its distant provinces. The lamp flame wavers slightly. You secure the report with cord, set it aside for tomorrow's courier. Outside, the first hint of pre-dawn coolness touches the air. The night is ending. The day's work, the real work, will begin again soon. You sit in your quarters looking at the closed ledgers on your desk, the lamplights soft on their leather covers. Evening has settled into that particular quiet, where the garrison has finished its daily work, and not yet begun whatever private business occupies men when supervision ends. The Optio enters without knocking. He does that now. 3 years of watching you skim revenue has earned him certain privileges, though neither of you has ever named them out loud. The assessor leaves in the morning, he says. I know. His report will be favorable. It will. He stands there a moment longer, his shadow sharp against the limestone wall. You know what he's thinking. You always know what he's thinking. The difference between you and the last centurion who held this posting is that you let him think it. You have begun to think of yourself as providing a service. You are simplifying the provincial tax system by eliminating the middleman and keeping the money directly, which is more efficient than having it travel to Antioch and then back as your salary. From a certain perspective, you are actually saving Rome administrative costs. You mentioned this theory to your Optio and he stared at you for a long moment before saying that if you can convince yourself that theft is actually fiscal responsibility, you have a promising career in provincial administration. The lamp flickers. You don't respond because there's nothing to respond to. The assessment is accurate. The provincial tax system functions on the principle that everyone involved takes a percentage and nobody names what they're taking. You've simply formalized the arrangement at your level of authority. The Optio moves to the window. His hand rests on the sill where the limestone still holds the day's heat. The merchants are content, he says. They are. The governor receives reports that satisfy him. He does. The garrison is fed and paid. It is. He turns from the window. His face in the lamplight looks older than it should. Or maybe you're just seeing him clearly for the first time in months. And you sleep well. It's not quite a question. You meet his eyes and hold them. Well enough, you say. He nods once. The gesture contains no judgment you can identify, which is somehow worse than if it did. He crosses to the door, pauses with his hand on the frame. The new grain shipment arrives next week, he says. I assume the usual arrangement. The usual arrangement. He leaves. You hear his footsteps fade down the corridor, measured and steady. A man who knows exactly where every coin is buried, and exactly what that knowledge is worth. The night air comes through the window, carrying the smell of the garrison settling toward sleep, leather oil from the armory, the faint char of the cook fires, their embers cooling in the compounds behind the barracks. The Optio's footsteps have faded completely now, swallowed by distance and limestone walls. You return your attention to the ledgers, both of them closed, both of them complete. The official version ready for the assessor's morning inspection, the private version secure in its separate location, where only 2 men know to look for it. The lamplight makes the grain of the wooden desk visible, each line a small shadow. Your eyes can follow those lines without thought or purpose, tracing them from one edge to the other, and learning nothing. The wax on the official ledger's seal is still soft enough to take a thumbprint if you pressed it. You don't press it. The seal will harden overnight, and in the morning the assessor will see what he came to see. Outside, the last voices of evening fade towards silence. The assessor sits across from you in the hour after the evening meal, when the heat has finally broken, and the air through the window carries the smell of cook fires and cooling stone. His cup sits untouched on the desk between you, wine from Judea, expensive enough to signal respect. He's been here 3 days. Long enough to inspect the official ledger, observe the morning drills, speak with the grain merchants, and form the conclusions he was always going to form. The inspection is theater. What matters happens now, in private, with the door closed. Your administration is exemplary, he says. His voice carries that particular measured quality of a man delivering an official assessment that both parties understand is prelude to something else entirely. The garrison functions efficiently. The provincial reports reflect consistent revenue. They do. He picks up the cup, takes a small sip, sets it down again with care, the base finding the exact ring of moisture it left before. A favorable report requires appropriate consideration, the assessor said. You've done this enough times to know the rhythm. The pause that follows is precisely calibrated, long enough to acknowledge what's been said, short enough to avoid discomfort. 200 denarii ensures accuracy in all details, you said. His head inclines, not quite a nod. Just a slight forward tilt that means agreement, without the vulgarity of stating it. The coins are already prepared. You kept them separate from the main cash, specifically for this purpose. Sorted by weight, so the purse has the correct heft when he lifts it. You slide it across the desk with minimal sound. His hand closes over it, and the purse disappears into his robes in one practiced motion. The leather of the purse was new this morning. You bought it from the same merchant who supplies the garrison saddle repairs, paid the exact price he quoted without negotiation, and he wrapped it without comment. It is the same weight and color as a dozen other purses that have crossed this desk in the same manner. The assessor's fingers know its shape without looking. Your hospitality is appreciated, he says. The words mean something else entirely, they always do. He finishes the wine, stands. The interview is complete. In the morning he'll depart for Antioch with a report that confirms your garrison operates within acceptable parameters, that revenue collection meets imperial standards, that no irregularities warrant further investigation. The limestone wall behind him holds the day's warmth still, radiating it slowly into the cooling air. The window frames a square of darkening sky where the first stars have begun to show. The garrison is settling toward sleep. Voices fading, footsteps growing sparse. The change of watch at the gate conducted in whispers rather than the daylight formality of salutes and reports. You walk into the door. The corridor beyond is empty, the torches burning low in their brackets. Safe journey, you say. May your command continue prosperously. He leaves. You return to your desk and the ledgers that will never be examined, because 200 denarii just ensured they won't need to be. You sort the month's takings into 2 piles on your desk, the coins cool and smooth under your fingers in the night air. The lamp burns steady. No wind tonight to make the flame dance. 1 pile will be buried in the courtyard garden where a particular stone marks the location. Wealth stored against uncertain futures. Against the possibility of a governor less indifferent than the current one. Against the chance that Rome's attention might someday actually focus on this small garrison in this forgettable corner of Syria. The other pile represents what you can spend openly. Appropriate prosperity for a centurion, wine from Judea, better oil for your lamp, a servant who keeps your quarters clean and asks no questions about the locked chest beneath the desk. The coins themselves are varied. Some are new from the imperial mint, their edges sharp enough to cut if you grip them carelessly. Others are worn smooth by years of passing through other hands in other transactions. A few show the profiles of emperors already dead, currency that continues to circulate because silver is silver regardless of whose face decorates it. You have learned to sort them by touch in low light. The weight and diameter tell you their value without needing to read the inscriptions. The pile for burial is larger. It's always larger. What you can spend is limited by what a centurion's salary should reasonably provide. What you can hide has no limit, except the physical space available beneath that particular stone in the courtyard where the jasmine grows thick enough to discourage questions. You wrap the burial coins in oiled leather. The package makes no sound when you lift it. Outside, the garrison sleeps. The sentries change with their usual rhythm, voices low at the gate. The courtyard is dark. You know the path without needing to see it. 6 paces from the door, turn left at the cistern. Follow the wall to where the jasmine makes the air heavy with its scent. The stone is limestone, worn smooth on top where your hands have lifted it monthly for 3 years. The hole beneath is deeper than it looks. You add the new package to the others already there. 7 packages now. Each one represents a month of careful theft. Each one is evidence that would end your career and possibly your life if anyone except the Optio knew where to look. You replace the stone. The jasmine closes over it again, hiding everything. Back in your quarters, the remaining pile of coins sits on your desk in the lamplight. This is the visible wealth. The acceptable accumulation. The evidence of a successful career in provincial service. You sort them into the clay jar where you keep spending money. The coins make a soft sound as they settle against each other. The ledgers sit closed. The lamp burns clean. Tomorrow the assessor departs, and the normal routine resumes. Both ledgers lie open side by side on the desk surface, their columns visible in the same circle of lamplight. The official ledger on the left shows grain requisitions at regulation price. The private ledger on the right shows the actual amounts paid. Your eyes move between them without conscious direction, checking that the fiction remains plausible, that the gaps between official and actual match the pattern established in previous months. The lamp flame holds steady. The numbers don't shift, everything balances. You run your finger down the official column. 300 modii of wheat, at 2 denarii per modius. The math is simple. 600 denarii total. The entry looks exactly like the entries made by every garrison quartermaster from here to the Rhine frontier. Standard format. Proper totals. Nothing that would make an auditor pause. The private ledger shows the same transaction differently. The grain merchant paid 700 denarii. The difference, 100 denarii, exists nowhere in the official record. It moved from his hands to yours to the locked chest beneath this desk. and the only evidence of its existence is the line of text visible in front of you now, written in the abbreviated notation that would mean nothing to anyone who didn't already know what it meant. You blink. Your eyes are tired. The lamp seems dimmer than it was an hour ago, though you filled it before sitting down. Perhaps it's just the lateness. The garrison is quiet outside. The evening meal finished. The men settled into whatever private routines occupy the hours between duty and sleep. The wax tablet under your hand still holds the impression of earlier calculations, faint marks where you worked through the month's numbers before committing them to the permanent records. You smooth the surface with your thumb, erasing the temporary marks. The gesture is automatic. You've done it 1,000 times. Both ledgers tell true stories. One tells the story Rome wants to hear. A provincial garrison operating within budget. Merchants paying regulation prices, everything proceeding according to the orderly fiction that allows the empire to function. The other tells the story of what actually happened, the payments made, the arrangements honored, the practical economy that keeps 40 men fed and equipped, and reasonably content, in a town 3 weeks, march from anywhere that matters. Neither story is complete without the other. The official ledger without the private record would be accurate but meaningless. The private ledger without the official fiction would be evidence of theft. Together, they describe reality. You rest your head in your hands for a moment, feeling the weight of calculations settling into the space behind your eyes. The numbers are still there when you close your eyes. Official on the left, actual on the right. The difference recorded in the abbreviated notation that exists only in this room. The lamp flickers slightly. You open your eyes and check the wick. It's fine. The oil level is fine. The flicker was nothing. Just air moving through the window, carrying the smell of cooling stone and distant cook fires. Outside, footsteps pass, the watch changing at the main gate. Voices exchange brief words. The footsteps fade. The garrison settles deeper into evening quiet. You turn your attention back to the ledgers. 3 more entries to check before the month's accounting is complete. The numbers wait in their columns, patient as stone. The grain merchant's shipment appears in both ledgers, recorded in different languages of value. Your mind converts between them without conscious effort now. When he mentions a delivery, you automatically calculate both what he will pay in official taxes and what he will actually pay, the difference appearing in a mental column that exists nowhere in writing, but is more accurate than any physical record. You recently realized that you now think in 2 different numerical systems simultaneously, official numbers and actual numbers, and can convert between them without conscious effort. When the grain merchant mentions a shipment, your mind automatically calculates both what he will pay in official taxes and what he will pay in actual taxes, the difference going into a mental column that exists nowhere in writing, but is more accurate than any ledger. You have become bilingual in the language of imperial accounting. The stylus moves across the wax, making the final notations for the month. Each mark is precise. Each number sits in its proper column. The official ledger shows expenses that will satisfy any auditor who bothers to review it. The private ledger shows income that will never be discussed with anyone outside this room. When you close your eyes briefly, the numbers are still visible, arranged in their separate columns, official on the left, actual on the right, the mathematics of 2 different realities existing in the same moment, describing the same transactions from different perspectives. Like learning to speak Latin and Greek simultaneously, thinking in both languages at once, your mind switching between them, depending on who's listening. The lamp seems dimmer now, though you filled it at the start of evening. Perhaps your eyes are simply tired. The day has been long, the calculations have been numerous. The mental work of maintaining 2 complete numerical systems, one for Rome, one for reality, takes a particular kind of stamina that has nothing to do with physical strength. You rub your eyes. The numbers blur for a moment, then resolve back into focus. Everything is in order. The fiction is complete. The truth is recorded. Both exist in the lamplight, side by side, telling their different versions of the same story to different audiences. Outside, the night has settled fully. No voices now. Just the distant sound of sentries on the wall, their footsteps marking the slow rhythm of garrison time. The town beyond the walls is dark, except for scattered cook fires visible as dim points through the window. You set down the stylus and let your hand rest flat on the desk surface. The wood is cool, smooth. You can feel the grain of it under your palm, each line a small ridge worn smooth by years of use. The ledgers lie open, waiting. 3 more entries remain. Then the month is complete. Then you can close both books, lock them in their separate places and let the day end. Your mind continues its automatic calculations even now, the weight of the remaining work measured in time, in effort, in the diminishing space between current weariness and the moment when you can finally stand, blow out the lamp, and walk the few steps to where sleep waits. The numbers hold their positions in the columns, patient, accurate, waiting only for your attention to complete what remains. The scratch of stylus on wax fills the silence, each mark a small sound that seems louder in the deep night quiet. You make the final entries mechanically, your hand knowing what to write even as your mind begins to drift toward the completion of the day's work. The last grain payment. Record it in official notation. Then record it again in private notation. The difference noted. The mathematics checked. Everything in balance. Your hand moves without requiring instruction now. The motions are automatic after so many months of the same ritual. Stylus lifts, moves to the next line, descends, marks the wax. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic in its repetition. Outside, the garrison has settled into the particular quiet that comes after the evening watch has taken their positions and before the night's private activities begin. Distant footsteps mark the slow patrol along the wall. Somewhere in the town, a dog barks once, then stops. The final entry appears in the official ledger, equipment maintenance, recorded at regulation cost, then the same entry in the private ledger, showing actual cost. The difference is minimal this time. Sometimes the official price and the actual price are nearly the same. Sometimes the system works almost honestly. You set down the stylus. The last notation is complete. The month's accounting is finished. Both ledgers tell their stories now, complete and accurate according to their different measures of truth. The lamp flame burns steady, casting its small circle of light across the desk surface. Beyond that circle, the room holds shadows that seem deeper now than they did an hour ago. The corners are dark. The walls have faded into dimness. You listen to the silence that follows the completion of work. It's a specific kind of quiet. Not the silence of waiting, but the silence of things finished, of obligations met, of the day's demands finally satisfied. Your shoulders ache slightly. The chair has become uncomfortable in the way chairs do when you've sat too long. The muscles in your back hold tension from hours of maintaining the posture required for close work with numbers and notation. The ledgers lie open still, but you'll close them now. The official ledger goes into the unlocked cabinet where it's available for any inspection that might occur. The private ledger goes into the locked chest beneath the desk, where it joins the previous month's records in the darkness that protects them. Outside, the footsteps of the watch pass again, the same rhythm as before, slow, steady, marking time in the measured pace of men who will walk this same route 100 times tonight, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, their presence itself the deterrent that keeps the garrison secure. You rest your hands flat on the desk surface and feel the coolness of the wood. The grain is visible in the lamplight, each line a small shadow, each marking showing where the tree grew, season by season, before it became this desk, this surface, this place where empires are maintained through the patient work of accounting. The night air moves through the window, cool now, carrying the smell of stone that has released the day's heat back into darkness. The sealed report sits on your desk in the lamplight, ready to travel to Antioch tomorrow. You look at it without really focusing. The wax seal caught the impression cleanly. The legion's mark visible in the surface, official and final. Inside, numbers describe grain shipments that arrived in quantities slightly different from what the merchants delivered. Tax assessments that reflect rates nobody actually paid. Garrison expenses calculated using formulas that account for costs that don't exist. A beautiful document. The most surreal moment of the month is when you send the official report to Antioch, a beautiful document full of numbers that describe a province that does not exist, governed by regulations no one follows, producing revenue that appears in ledgers but not in reality. Someone in Antioch will read this report, make small notations in their own ledgers, and send an even more fictional report to Rome. You are part of a chain of lies so long that no one remembers what truth looked like, and the empire functions perfectly well regardless. The lamp flame wavers slightly, makes the seal seem to move. You lean back in the chair. Your spine presses against the wood, finding the spots worn smooth over months of sitting exactly here, doing exactly this. Outside, the garrison is settling into night. Voices fading, footsteps trailing off toward the barracks, the soft sounds of men finding their bunks after a day of drills and duties that also exist in two versions, official and actual. Your fiction will become someone else's data. That data will travel north, where it will be summarized, adjusted, formatted according to different standards. The summary will become part of a larger report covering multiple garrisons, multiple provinces. That report will travel to Rome, where it will be read by officials who have never seen Syria, who understand the empire entirely through documents like this one. And somewhere in that chain between your desk and theirs, the lie becomes truth, not because anyone believes it, because everyone agrees to use it. The seal stares back at you, red wax, clean impression. Tomorrow it leaves your hands, travels with the morning dispatch, becomes part of the permanent record of how Rome governs its eastern provinces during the reign of Antoninus Pius, a period historians will later describe as stable, prosperous, well administered. They won't be wrong. The lamp burns lower. The flame stays steady now, no more wavering. The room holds its shape around you. Limestone walls, narrow window, desk worn smooth by years of previous centurions doing exactly what you're doing, maintaining the same elegant fiction, feeding the same chain. You place one hand flat on the desk surface, feel the slight grain of the wood under your palm, cool, solid. Real in a way the sealed report is not, though the report will outlast this moment, will exist in archives, long after this desk has rotted, and this garrison has crumbled, and Syria has passed through a dozen different hands. The air smells faintly of heated wax. The scent has been present since you pressed the seal, sweet, organic, mixed with traces of the lamp oil burning nearby. It settles in your nostrils, familiar, the smell of completion. The fiction survives, the fiction travels, the fiction becomes history. The wax seal catches the lamplight one more time. The office makes small sounds as the night deepens. Wood creaking somewhere in the ceiling beams. The slow contraction of timber that spent the day expanding under heat, now releasing that warmth back into cooler air. Not loud, barely audible. The kind of sound you only notice when everything else has gone quiet. A papyrus scroll shifts on the shelf, settles a fraction of an inch. The sound is soft, a whisper of reed against wood, then silence again. Your own breathing has become the loudest thing in the room, in and out, steady, slow. Each breath visible to you now not as sound but as movement, your chest rising, falling, the rhythm of it automatic and ancient. The lamp flame makes no sound at all, burns without crackling. Oil feeding wick in perfect silence, light spreading across the desk in a circle that seems smaller now than it did an hour ago, though nothing has changed except how you perceive it. Somewhere distant, 2 corridors away, maybe 3, a door closes. The sound reaches you muffled, absorbed by the thickness of limestone walls. Not a slam. Just the soft thud of wood meeting frame, then the scrape of a bolt sliding home. Then silence returns. Deeper than before. The stone walls hold it. Darkness pressed against the window from outside, the kind of darkness that only exists far from cities, when night means the complete absence of light rather than its reduction. You can feel that darkness against the glass, patient, waiting. Another creak from the ceiling, slower this time, longer, the building itself breathing. Your forearms rest on the desk's surface. You notice the coolness of the wood against your skin, where your sleeves have been rolled back. Temperature transferring slowly, wood to flesh to air. The sensation so gradual you can't pinpoint when it began, only that it's there now, present, real. The lamp oil carries a faint scent, not smoke, the flame burns too clean for that, but the organic sweetness of the oil itself, olive pressed months ago. Stored in clay jars, poured into this lamp at dusk, now evaporating particle by particle into air that barely moves. The lamp burns. The shadows stay where they are. The sealed report sits beside your hand. Tomorrow it travels. Tonight it waits with you in the quiet, in the settling, in the small sounds of a building and a body, both releasing the day's accumulated weight back into darkness. You feel the chair under you. Not as an idea, as pressure. The way your weight has settled into wood over hours of work. Your spine against the backrest. Your thighs taking the body's mass. The pressure points where bone meets surface through cloth and muscle. The heaviness is distributed unevenly. More weight on your left side because you've been leaning that direction while writing. Your right arm extended toward the desk, stylus in hand. Now both forearms rest flat on the wood surface. The coolness of it against your skin registers clearly, real, immediate. There is an ache in your lower back. Not sharp, not injury. The dull, persistent weight that comes from sitting too long in armor, then sitting again after you've removed the armor, the muscles remembering the posture even after the load is gone. You shift slightly, the ache moves with you, settles into a new configuration. Your shoulders carry their own heaviness, the day's drills. The weight of mail worn from dawn through the morning inspection, the straps cutting their familiar grooves into muscle that has learned over years exactly how to bear that particular burden. Now, hours later, without the armor, the shoulders still hold the memory of it, the ghost of weight. The heaviness in your limbs is not unpleasant. It is the body's way of saying the work is done. The lamplight falls across your hands. You see them clearly, knuckles, tendons, the small scars accumulated over a career of practical violence and administrative precision. They look like someone else's hands for a moment. Then they're yours again, familiar, known. The desk holds everything, sealed report, empty wax tablet, stylus lying beside your right hand, where you placed it after the last entry, each object in its place, each task complete. Outside, nothing moves. The night has reached that hour where even the sentries walk more slowly, their voices, if they speak at all, too distant to reach through limestone walls a foot thick. The garrison sleeps, the town sleeps. Somewhere beyond the walls, Syria continues in darkness, its mysteries and commerce, and endless minor corruptions, all suspended until dawn makes them visible again. You sit with the completion. The weight in your limbs, the ache in your back, the coolness of wood against your forearms, the pressure of the chair. The lamp burning low, the shadows soft now, no longer sharp, no longer threatening to expose anything. Just darkness at the edges. Just warmth in the center. Just the settled weight of a day ended, accounts balanced, fictions sealed and ready to travel, the empire maintained, through one more rotation of sun and shadow, and the small precise lies that hold everything together. The lamplight seems softer now. You cannot tell if the oil is running low, or if your eyes are simply closing. The circle of light on the desk has edges that blur into shadow, without a clear boundary between the two states. The ledgers are closed. You think they are closed. Your hand rests near them on the wooden surface, and the grain of the wood is visible in the lamplight. Each line a small shadow, darker where the grain runs deep. Your eyes can follow those lines without thought or purpose, the way water follows a channel cut into stone. The wax seal on the report catches the light. Red wax, stamped flat, holding the papyrus closed. You remember sealing it, though the memory feels distant now, like something that happened earlier in a different room. The seal is cool when you touch it, smooth, final. Your breath has slowed to match the rhythm of the night. In through the nose, out through the mouth, each cycle longer than the one before. The air moving through the window carries no particular scent now, just the cool neutrality of deep night, when the heat has finally left the stone, and the dust has settled, and nothing moves except the slow turning of hours toward dawn. The lamp flame holds steady. You watch it without focusing, the small point of light wavering slightly in air currents you cannot feel. The flame makes no sound. The oil makes no sound. The night makes no sound, except for the occasional settling of timber somewhere in the building, wood contracting as it cools, releasing the day's expansion in small adjustments too minor to matter. Your shoulders have dropped. You notice this without deciding it. The tension that held them level through the evening's work has drained away, leaving only the weight of bone and muscle resting in their natural position. Your hands lie open on the desk surface, palms down, fingers slightly curved. The wood is cool against your skin. The ledgers sit closed beside the lamp. The numbers inside them, both sets of numbers, in both languages of value, wait in their columns like soldiers standing at ease. Patient. Complete. Requiring nothing further until morning brings new transactions and new fictions and new careful balances between what Rome believes and what actually happens in this garrison town, where 40 men maintain an empire through arithmetic and appropriate discretion. But morning is not here yet. The darkness beyond the window holds no hint of dawn. The lamplight makes a small circle of visibility in a room that extends into shadow in all directions, and that shadow feels less like absence now and more like presence. The quiet, patient presence of night doing what night does, which is nothing in particular except exist and wait, and eventually give way to dawn without drama or announcement. Your eyelids are heavy. The heaviness is not uncomfortable. It is simply a fact, like the coolness of stone or the weight of coins, or the distance between this garrison and Antioch, where reports travel, and governors read what they want to read, and the empire continues in its comfortable patterns of mutual exploitation. The lamplight fades at its edges, or perhaps your vision narrows. The distinction does not seem important. What remains visible? The desk surface, the sealed report, the closed ledgers, your own hands resting open and still, seems sufficient. Everything else can wait in shadow until it matters again. The smell of cooling wax reaches you from the sealed report. Sweet and mineral at once, the particular scent of beeswax mixed with pigment, now hardening into its final shape. The seal will hold until someone breaks it open in Antioch. Days from now, weeks from now, whenever the report makes its way through the chain of provincial administration to a desk where someone will read the official fiction and file it among other official fictions and close the matter without ever knowing what actually happened here. Olive oil from the lamp. You can smell that too now, though it was invisible to your attention an hour ago. The scent is light, almost sweet, with the faint acrid edge that comes from heat. The oil burns clean. You pay extra for the quality, because a centurion's lamp should not smoke or sputter or fill the room with the smell of rancid fat. The cost appears in neither ledger. Some expenses exist outside the mathematics of empire. Dust. The room smells of dust that has settled through the day, fine particles that hung in the air during the afternoon heat, visible in shafts of sunlight through the window, now settled onto every horizontal surface in layers too thin to see, but thick enough to carry the dry, neutral scent of Syrian earth and limestone buildings, and the particular smell of a place where people work and live and maintain an empire through small daily actions that accumulate over time into something that looks like order. Old papyrus. The reports and records stacked against the wall carry their own scent, vegetable fiber and river water, and the faint, musty sweetness of material that has traveled far from where it was made. Egyptian papyrus, most of it, shipped north through Alexandria and Antioch, and distributed to garrison towns where centurions keep accounts and file reports, and participate in the empire's vast appetite for documentation. Wooden furniture, the desk, the chair, the shelf along the wall, all of it Lebanese cedar, cut and shaped and fitted by craftsmen who knew their work. The wood has its own smell, faint but present, released slowly over years as the timber ages and dries and settles into its permanent shape. Resinous. Clean. The smell of forests that no longer exist, reduced to furniture in a Syrian garrison town. And something else. Something harder to name. The particular scent of a room where someone has been working for hours. The faint salt smell of skin. The warmth of breath. The accumulated presence of a body sitting still in one place, while the night deepened, and the work continued and the lamp burned through its oil. Not unpleasant, simply human, the proof that you were here, doing what needed doing, alone in a circle of lamplight while the garrison slept. These scents blend together. They do not compete or separate. They exist as a single complex smell that means completion. Work finished, accounts balanced, report sealed, the day's business concluded and ready to be filed away into the vast indifferent memory of imperial administration. Your breath moves through this air, in and out, slower now than it was an hour ago. Each inhalation brings the scent of completion. Each exhalation releases it back into the room. The cycle continues without effort or attention. Your body knows how to breathe. Your lungs know how to process air. The mechanics of survival continue while your conscious mind drifts toward the edges of sleep. The lamp flame holds steady. The oil burns clean. The wax seal sits complete on the desk. The ledgers remain closed. Everything that needed doing has been done. What remains is only the slow settling of a day into memory, the gradual release of tension and purpose, the soft dissolution of attention into the comfortable darkness that waits beyond the lamp circle. The night air moves through the window. Cool against your forearms where you rolled up your sleeves hours ago when the work was still active, and your hands needed freedom to move the stylus across wax, to sort coins into piles, to seal reports with hot wax and pressure. The coolness sinks deeper with each breath, not cold. Just the absence of heat, the neutral temperature of deep night in a limestone building, when the walls have released all the warmth they absorbed through the day, and the air has settled into the particular stillness that comes after midnight, when even the sentries move quietly, and the whole garrison sleeps, except for the few men whose duty keeps them awake. Your skin registers the difference, the contrast between the warm flesh of your inner arms and the cool air passing over them. The sensation is not uncomfortable. It is simply present, the way stone is present or darkness is present, a fact requiring no response except awareness. The stone walls have given up their stored heat. You cannot see this, but you can feel it in the quality of the air, in the way the room feels different now than it did at sunset, when the limestone still radiated warmth, and the whole building felt like a kiln slowly cooling. Now the walls are neutral, neither warm nor cold, just stone doing what stone does, which is hold its shape and bear weight, and maintain the boundary between inside and outside, while remaining fundamentally indifferent to everything that happens within those boundaries. The coolness reaches deeper, past skin, into muscle. The sensation is not unpleasant. It is the physical feeling of the day being completely over, of the body's stored tension draining away, of the readiness for sleep arriving not as exhaustion but as simple completion. Your breathing has slowed to match the rhythm of cooling. Each inhalation brings cool air into your lungs. Each exhalation releases warmth back into the room. The exchange continues without thought. Your body knows how to regulate itself, how to process air and maintain temperature, and prepare for the long stillness of sleep. The lamp flame wavers slightly. The movement is barely visible, but you notice it anyway. The small response to air currents you cannot feel yourself. The flame's sensitivity to movements too subtle for human skin to register. The light dims fractionally, then brightens, then settles back to its steady glow. This coolness is not uncomfortable. It is the sensation of night being fully present, of the day's heat finally gone, of the transition complete between the active hours and the still hours. Your body accepts it without resistance. The cool air on your forearms, the cool stone surrounding you, the cool darkness beyond the window where the garrison sleeps, and the Syrian night continues in its slow turning toward dawn. There is a sound of distant nothing. Not silence exactly, but the absence of anything requiring your attention. The stylus sits beside your hand where you placed it after the final entry. The wax tablets are closed. The papyrus is sealed. The work is complete. Sleep is arriving not as something you decide but as something that happens, like lamplight dimming, like doors closing, like stone cooling, like breath slowing to the rhythm of deep night. The boundary between waking and sleeping has become uncertain. You cannot tell anymore which side you are on, and the distinction no longer seems to matter. The darkness beyond the lamp circle stretches out into nothing in particular. No threat, no promise. Just the patient darkness of a Syrian night in a garrison town, where Rome's authority rests in ledgers and sealed reports, and the quiet understanding between men who know how empires actually work. The accounts are balanced, both of them. The official truth and the private truth, each recorded in its proper place, each serving its necessary function in the machinery of provincial administration. The grain merchant will return tomorrow. The optio will keep his knowledge to himself. The governor in Antioch will read what he wants to read. The empire will continue, because the empire always continues, maintained not by grand strategy or military might, but by 10,000 small arrangements like the ones you made today, by centurions in provincial garrison towns keeping 2 sets of books, and knowing which truth to tell to whom. Your eyes are closing. The lamplight fades, not because the oil is running low but because you are no longer looking at it. The desk, the ledgers, the sealed report, all of it disappears into comfortable darkness as consciousness loosens its grip on the immediate world and lets itself drift towards sleep. The last sound is your own breath, slow, even, the rhythm of a body at rest. The work is done, the fictions are sealed, the truths are buried, everything is in order. Another day of empire ending the way days end, in darkness and silence, and the long comfortable descent into sleep, where ledgers do not matter, and empires dissolve into dreams, and nothing requires your attention except the simple act of breathing in the quiet darkness of a Syrian night. Sleep comes, finally, completely, like administrative silence settling over completed work.